why does the restaurant industry have such a hard time getting employees? I know a lot of it, for a while there was pay, but a lot of restaurants are remedying that now. And it's not the hours, because there's a reason why people go to the restaurant industry. It's because of the flexibility of the hours. If you have an appointment on a particular day and you don't want to have to feel rushed, guess what? You can take that day off. There's a lot of flexibility when it comes to the restaurant industry when we're talking about hours. Pay is being remedied. There's a lot of pros that are going on here. The biggest thing that I think is getting in the way is the way in which we hire people. If somebody puts in an application with your company, do you directly get it? Or does it go through some type of hiring service? If it's going through some type of hiring service, whether that be a service that you pay for externally, or it's going through your HR department and a recruiting team, they are filtering who you get to see. And they filter that by a criteria that they set up. You know, a lot of restaurants that are owned by corporations have a recruiting team that sit here and say, if you have a criminal background, you're not eligible for hire. If you don't answer these 30 questions correctly, then you're not eligible for hire. Why are we doing this? Why are we taking the probably 2 weeks it takes for that recruiter to go through hundreds of applications for multiple different positions within multiple different restaurants to find somebody, say this person's okay to potentially interview, and then send it over to the general manager for the general manager to look at it and go, well, this person has been job hopping for the last 2 years and has 13 different jobs, but it's the only one I've gotten, so I'm going to go ahead and interview this person and hire him because I'm desperate. Why are we having an HR department with a recruiting team, or why are we having an external source tell us who we can interview? Interview everybody. As long as they don't bomb the fucking interview, hire them. And then they go into a training period and a probationary period, and you monitor these people, and you coach these people. And if you find that that person is not capable of doing the job, then you get comfortable with firing people. Turnover is okay. Everybody wants to sit here and say that they need to have low turnover. Fuck that. Turnover is okay. Turnover means you are able to make a good decision. If turnover is happening because you're eliminating employees that are causing problems, you're eliminating people that just can't do the job, that is positive turnover. Negative turnover is what happens when you can't get somebody in the door and people start leaving because they're burnt out. You can't get somebody in the door, and so you're hanging on to that toxic employee, and then people quit because they have to deal with that toxic employee. That's negative turnover. Positive turnover is when you've hired somebody, they aren't working out, you have a discussion with them saying, you know, so far things aren't good. These are what our expectations are. We're not meeting that expectation. Are we going to be able to get to the point where we meet that expectation? You know, this is the amount of time that I'm going to give you to meet that expectation. These are the steps that I think it's going to take to get you to that point. If you can do that, then we can have a working relationship. However, if we don't get there, then that's going to be the time when we separate our relationship as employee and employer. And that's positive turnover. If you have to eventually get rid of that employee, that's positive turnover because you've made a positive decision for the business. Stop letting HR departments and recruiting teams and external sources determine who you get to see as a potential employee. Somebody walks in your door and they say they want a job. Instead of having to send them to a website where they have to fill out all this information, sit them down and talk to them. Make the time. You may have a bunch of things going on, but if you're short-staffed, you make the time. If you can't make the time, you aren't in that dire of a need of an employee. Either that or you're just a really shit manager. But make the time for that person that walks in the door. A lot of these people that are looking for a job, that are willing to bust their butt for you, they might have just gotten out of prison. Who cares? If that person is willing to work their ass off for you, who cares? That person may smoke weed. Who cares? As long as they're not doing it on your property, as long as they're not breaking the law, as long as they are not causing problems for you as the employer, don't worry about what they're doing outside of your business. If they're not causing problems for you, they are a good employee. You have plenty of other people that you are already employing that are causing you problems, and you're worried about what this person might do. Quit worrying about mights and maybes. Mights and maybes are going to make it so you never have a single employee in your business whatsoever. If mights and maybes were there, you might get into a car accident and not show up. That's going to happen with your employees. And are we going to say that simply because somebody might get into a car accident and miss a day of work that we're not going to hire them? No. Are we going to say that because somebody might get into an altercation outside of work that we're not going to hire them? You look at those two situations and they seem drastically different, but they're exactly the same. They're mights, they're maybes. Maybe this person doesn't work out. I'm not going to hire them because I'm scared that they're going to cost me some money in training because they don't work out. I'm scared that I'm going to leave them on shift, expecting them to be able to do the job, and they're going to fail. Okay, people fail. It happens. We need to get comfortable with that. We need to get comfortable with failure. We need to get comfortable with tough conversations. We need to get comfortable with holding people accountable. We need to get comfortable with so many different things that are uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable to hold people accountable. It is uncomfortable to have to write somebody up. It is uncomfortable to have to terminate somebody. But there are so many steps before termination that can remedy the situation, but we just avoid them. We avoid the conversation. We avoid writing people up. We avoid giving coaching. We avoid giving direction. We avoid telling anybody that they've done anything wrong, whether or not they're being written up, whether or not this is a tough conversation. We don't even bother to tell them that they did something wrong. We just have somebody else do it. And because we're so afraid of things that might go wrong, we don't even end up getting the employee in the first place because we're worried that they have a criminal record. We're worried that they had a drug possession charge. We're worried that they can't pass the piss test. Who cares? If you need a fucking employee, hire somebody. The first person that walks in the door, interview them. Tell them what the expectations of the job are. If they can meet the expectations of that job, or if they believe that they can, you give them a shot. You get them trained, you put them on a probationary period to get to a certain point, and it is explained in paperwork that they need to get to a certain point by this date, because that is the expectation. And if they don't meet that expectation, then you have another conversation with them of coaching. You set a new date, and if they don't reach it by then, you get rid of them. Get comfortable with confrontation. Get comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. That is the only way that you are going to be successful in a restaurant. That's the only way you're going to be successful in business altogether. Get comfortable with the uncomfortable.